biggest piece of Bitcoin regulation looks to be days away from passing in America. And Donald Trump had a closed-door meeting yesterday surrounding the Clarity Act with Senate Republicans. We also got a flood of clips today coming from key witnesses and government insiders about the Clarity Act, which it's basically going to be the entire show today. And we did get an update on the Genius Act this week from Kevin Warsh, the new Fed chair, which, if you don't remember, Putin's economic advisor said the U.S. was using to reset its $39 trillion of debt. There's only days left before the Clarity Act deadline, and we got a lot of interesting headlines for you today. But let's start with this clip. It's a short one, and I think it adds the kind of the pressure that we're seeing right now and the last minute push that we're seeing to get the Clarity Act through.
The Clarity Act is incredibly important in maintaining the U.S. economy as the center of the global economy. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that this is going to be a technology that is infused into the businesses of all these other witnesses here, like, it is imperative that that be within the structures, just like our securities markets are, just like our derivatives markets are, right? I think part of the reason of their success over the years has been the regulatory environment in which they get to operate.
Thank you for that. We're on the 1 yard line. We just got to score the touchdown. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
So there you hear it. At the 1 yard line, and the touchdown, I guess, at least from what I'm seeing from this field hearing this morning, or rather, it just finished, I believe, before the show started. It looks like they are very bullish on getting this through. Anyways, what am I talking about? So there was a field hearing today. I think it started at 10 a.m. It pretty much wrapped up right before we went live. If you're on Twitter this morning, there's a bunch of clips coming out of it. Some people are a little more probably favorable than I am. I did hear a little shitcoin stuff in there, but hey, this is what the Clarity Act is probably going to do. It's about digital assets at large and not just Bitcoin itself. But the U.S. State House Committee on Financial Services this morning had a field hearing entitled, quote, "Building the Future of Finance, How the Clarity Act Unlocks Innovation." And you can see here the legislation is for expressing support for blockchain technology and digital assets and covering the American Reserve Modernization Act, which is, of course, Nick Begich, the representative from Alaska, who's essentially trying to codify that the U.S. is going to buy a bunch of Bitcoin. So that's what we're hearing this morning. There is a little bit of nuance here where, from what I was seeing, this is obviously not going to necessarily influence Senate's view or approval of the Clarity Act passing, because that's what's going on. The House passed their version of the Clarity Act. Actually, the House passed the Clarity Act. Now it's going to go to the Senate, and this is where all the deliberation is happening. From what I heard and from the clips that I saw, apparently there was no Democratic representative at this field hearing. There was a few Republican representatives there. So again, this might and might not necessarily influence what we see from the Senate, but from all of the testimonials we saw and that I saw, they're very bullish on this going through. I actually have a clip for you guys in the numbers that is probably the most bullish clip coming from Representative, I don't know how to say his name. I think it's Steil or Steil. He's extremely bullish that this is going to happen. Anyways, moving forward, giving you a little bit of an update of what was actually said and what the conversations were about. Here's Connor Brown from the Bitcoin Policy Institute. And he goes, update, the ARMA, or the American Reserve Modernization Act, continues to progress through Congress. Today, the Financial Service Committee is holding a hearing on ARMA and Clarity. And this marks the first time that a strategic Bitcoin reserve bill has been considered by a federal congressional committee. And of course, BPI will continue to update us. So big day in terms of Bitcoin and Washington, D.C. And here, let me pull back what Senator Lummis was tweeting this morning. She goes, check certainty for developers, check protection for investors, check integrity for markets. Digital asset legislation should deliver all three, and the Clarity Act does. So Senator Lummis has been on the beat for a long time. She has obviously been working overtime to get this passed. And from at least the general sentiment of this field hearing, It might not all be in vain. It seems like the last minute push again, the 11th hour, maybe the 11th hour and 50 minutes push here, the 1 yard line push. It looks like it, as of now, everyone's extremely bullish that this might actually happen. So maybe I was a little bearish on it happening for a while. You know, I've definitely gotten a little cynical about the political process and Bitcoin, but it seems as of now, it's looking pretty good. So maybe we see some last minute, you know, miracle happen. But more updates here. Here's Eleanor Terrett's view on this. And she goes, the financial GOP or financial services GOP will hold a field hearing today, just happened, examining how the Clarity Act could unlock innovation. The hearing is informational and, again, does not affect the Senate's consideration of the bill. But meanwhile, yesterday, Trump met with the Senate Republicans in regards to, the Clarity Act. And we know that the federal government, the Trump administration, has been extremely bullish on the Clarity Act. In the last few weeks, they have definitely put their hat in the ring, and they're pushing extremely hard to get the Clarity Act through. Now, does that necessarily mean anything? Do they have weight here? Yes and no. Obviously, there's a lot of people that don't want to push through any legislation that has, you know, a Trump endorsement on it. On the other side, obviously, a Trump endorsement means a lot. And probably the GOP, the Republicans, are all falling in line to back what Trump wants to do. Anyways, we don't have an updated legislative text from yesterday's meeting. We really don't know what was said in this closed door meeting from Trump and the Senate Republicans, but it seemed to have revolved around the ethics clause. Now, obviously, we all heard the big story last week that was reporting all of the money that Trump has made from meme coins. You know, it was about $1 billion of profits that they have made. Anyways, industry leaders tell me they're now preparing for the rollout of text to slip into next week. So the official timeline has been that Monday, the Senate will come in and talk about the Clarity Act and start getting this process going through. Now we're going to see that we will get most likely the official wording of the Clarity Act at some point next week, hopefully earlier in the week. We've been hearing a lot of, I don't want to say speculation or rumors, but we've been hearing that, yes, the wording is in, and we will, as a public, get it next week. Now, I do have probably the latest timeline of what is going on, and this is coming from investors.com, titled Trump to attend key meeting for Clarity Act, prediction markets see a 41% chance of passing. And here is probably the only part that really gives you a timeline and how close to the wire this is, and why we are seeing a huge push for the Clarity Act, as well as a huge push against the Clarity Act from the incumbent Elizabeth Warren camp here. So here's the quote. It goes, Lummis on Wednesday told Fox Business she expects the Clarity Act to reach the Senate floor for a vote sometime next week. Quote, we will be introducing it in the next few days. We're going to be in session now for 4 straight weeks. It's very important we get this bill across the finish line before the August recess begins so we can make the markets aware of the stability that will be provided to them if they remain onshore in the United States to do business. There is an August recess, which will begin on August 10th. So there's not that much time left. Okay. And of course, there's also other considerations that Congress will most likely put in front of the Clarity Act, but it's really we're getting down to the wire. So next week is going to be a huge week in regards to the Clarity Act. Hopefully this official Clarity Act gets through to us maybe Monday or Tuesday, but it seems, at least again, from everything we're hearing out of this field hearing, they're extremely bullish on it. They want to really push Bitcoin through, or the Clarity Act through, Bitcoin and digital assets. There was a lot of talk about, you know, financial innovation and adopting technology and how this is going to bring us into the 21st century. And there was a lot of parallels of, you know, we weren't able to really predict what would happen in the last 20 years. And now that we have Bitcoin and, quote, digital assets, they're like, the next 20 years of innovation is going to be absolutely insane, which we could totally agree on this. Now, a few more updates before I bring Nico in here, our, jokingly, maybe mockingly reigning political expert on the show. Here is Peter Valkenborough or Burr from, I believe, Coin Center. Yes, executive director at Coin Center. And he goes, Jason testifying now. All the witnesses are killing it. Clarity shouldn't even be a controversial bill. It's common sense regulation of trusted persons in our space. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are just, being cynical about the whole process. It's like, hey, it's a surveillance bill, which to that point, Senator Lummis kind of did almost reinforce that idea. So not to throw her under the bus, but she tweeted this morning. We wrote the Clarity Act to give law enforcement more tools, not fewer. The Clarity Act writes real-time interdiction between exchanges and investigators into law, allows illicit funds to be frozen in hours instead of waiting years, and preserves every money laundering charge investors already rely on. And then to wrap this up, another key politician that has been on this beat for a long time, and if you've been watching this show, is of course Patrick McHenry. And he goes, for over 2 decades, this was yesterday in Congress, I saw how bold, forward-looking legislation can move our country ahead and how outdated rules leave us scrambling to catch up. The Clarity Act is Congress's chance to be proactive, establish consumer protections, provide regulatory certainty, and give entrepreneurs the confidence to build. As I write in Fortune, Congress can seize the moment and break the cycle of reactive regulation. Now is our chance. Now, to add another wrinkle, remember what I was saying yesterday in terms of what is happening in South Korea and Japan. The biggest news was probably what Japan did, and they really jumped the gun here. They did essentially beat the U.S. to regulatory clarity, but obviously the U.S. being the financial center of the world, what we do has a lot more effect here.
Bro, it wasn't even Japan. El Salvador has...
Yeah, but dude, their GDP is $32 billion. It is a tiny country. They're insignificant in the context of financial power.
I disagree. I think they're going to be super significant over the next couple of years. But look, a couple take here. So here's kind of my analysis so you guys understand what's going on, like in the general gist of things. So President Trump went on TV yesterday, and he unclassified a ton of documents relating to the 2020 election. We're not going to get into the details of that, but it's important you understand the context. The next thing that happened was that there's an extreme push right now by the White House to get their agenda across the finish line. And the reason all of this is happening at this moment is because the prediction markets right now have the Republicans losing the House at 85%. So essentially what's happening is they're trying to brute force his agenda because they know they're running out of time. So that's why you're seeing all this positive news and positive talk coming out of legacy media, coming out of senators, coming out of congressmen, coming out of congresswomen, because they know that ultimately they're fundamentally running out of time. So it's more of an optics thing. I don't know if it actually increases the probability, because statistically speaking, like I said, the odd markets put it at a 34% chance of it passing. But you can tell that the administration is moving at full force to try to get their initiatives across the finish line. Number one is the SAVE Act, which would, change the election laws in the United States, which again was a big priority for the Trump administration. And then number two is the Clarity Act. Because if he can't get these passed before the November midterms, forget about it. He's probably going to get impeached again, because that's the Democrat strategy. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't matter. It's just their political strategy. Will Trump actually get impeached? No, it's very difficult to get impeached because you need a big majority in the Senate, which they won't have. So, that's what's happening from a political standpoint, is they're really just making a ton of noise to try to get Trump's agenda over the finish line before the midterms come up. Some comments here. Why didn't Trump release the press conference that he did when he first got into office. That's what the people were asking for. He had a mandate by the American people. He won the House, he won the Senate, and the Republicans won the executive branch. He burnt a ton of political capital, which is why I got so emotional. And a lot of you guys were giving me heat on this when the Iran conflict started. He burnt a ton of political capital when his finances were exposed, where it basically showed that the Trump administration made an absolute fortune off of Bitcoin/crypto while everybody else got wrecked. And you could surmise from that there was some insider trading. So, again, this is kind of like an act of, I wouldn't call it desperation, but it is like a Hail Mary pass before Republicans lose control of the House. That's what's happening. That's why you see all these clips on legacy media. I have one lined up for you guys right here. This was, I believe, from Fox News. Let's check it out.
Senate has been struggling to move this forward. I'm optimistic that we get this across the line next week in the United States Senate. It's absolutely essential that the United States sets the gold standard for regulations in the digital asset space.
So, yeah. So just to kind of give you guys an idea of what the hell's actually going on from a political sense. And it is a midterm year. So this is like normal American politics. My take on all of this, my opinion on this, my humble opinion on this is they should have done this in the beginning of his term. It would have been a lot more effective when he had the mandate from the American people. He had the momentum. And then what ended up happening is, again, he spent his first year trading, those Truth Social posts where the market would drop like 10% and he'd say, oh, we have to, we're going to increase tariffs on these countries. And then the next day, actually no tariffs anymore. And then it just kept kind of going back and forth. The market would drop. He spent his first year doing that.
Wait, can we talk about the other Trump social thing that happened yesterday? That was crazy.
Absolutely.
All right. So on that note, I don't know if you guys saw, I guess Truth Social launched a basically paid program where you can get the Trump tweets earlier than everyone else. So just kind of like doubling down on the insider trade. You can get involved in the insider trading if you just buy the Truth Social post, whatever they're calling it now, paid group here where you get Trump's tweets like, seconds or minutes before the rest of the population before it goes live. So anyways, not to derail the conversation, but it was actually kind of crazy.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I mean, look, the way that Elon describes Trump is, and they obviously had a very close relationship, and then they had a falling out, and then they got closer again. Trump is he comes from his time. This is someone who, he was in his 30s during the 80s. A lot of crazy stuff happened during the 80s. Like you guys have seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street.
Well, that was 90s, but
80s, 90s. Yeah. And then that other movie with Gordon Gekko, right? So it's like, Wall Street was crazy at those times, and Wall Street's in New York, and Trump, essentially built his career in New York. So none of this really kind of surprises me. I'm personally very bullish on the future of the Republican Party. I hope Marco Rubio gets elected in the next election. It'd be very positive for Venezuela and Cuba and just a lot of American countries that have been under oppressive collectivist regimes, to put it nicely. So, let's see what happens. And Marco Rubio also has a very positive stance against Bitcoin. Now, unfortunately, what I hoped would happen is that after the defeat of the Democrats in 2024, during the 2024 election cycle, I would have hoped that they would have changed their strategy as it relates to crypto, as it relates to Bitcoin. You could make a very solid argument that actually cost them the election. full stop. Like Elizabeth Warren campaigning on an anti-crypto army, and she's the head of the Senate Banking Committee for the Democratic Party, I don't think was very popular with Americans. Unfortunately, and Opti's pulling up this CoinDesk article, Senator Hagerty says Senator Warren tried to destroy the Genius Act. Yeah, I mean, we saw that famous meme of her like with her hands on her hip in frustration when the Genius Act was getting passed. So she's not a fan of this. And there's two takes on this, and then we're going to move on to the next segment. And also, too, we're going to be announcing a documentary that we're going to be premiering exclusively on the Simply Bitcoin platform tomorrow. Very excited about it. We have the director and the director and people that were involved in the production of this documentary coming on today's show to talk about it. It's going to be awesome. It's a full feature documentary. It's really cool. It's about Bitcoin. It's awesome. We're going to be talking about that. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned. We have the trailer for you guys and everything. So Elizabeth Warren and a part of the Democratic Party, not all of the Democratic Party, fundamentally still are anti-Bitcoin. And there's two reasons for that. The Arthur Hayes reason is Sam Bankman-Fried was their poster boy. He ended up being a scammer. No surprise there. Also, breaking news that the Senate essentially denied that he can get a pardon, which is, I think, I don't wish ill will on anyone, but like, you know, I personally believe that Sam Bankman-Fried deserves the prison sentence that he got. Like, he wrecked so many people that, you know, had their funds on FTX. And then there's the other stance, and this is my personal opinion, is that from an ideological perspective, I think that they fundamentally believe that the future of money are central bank digital currencies. And you can't have a central bank digital currency if you have a competing alternative non-sovereign monetary system like Bitcoin. So that ultimately, I believe that's what it's actually about. And they'll use the guise of, this is for your protection, this is for the children, this is going to destabilize the US financial system. They'll use all those buzzwords, but in reality, it's because they don't want a competition for their CBDC. And presidential elections in the United States are a coin flip. They're 50-50. They've basically been 50-50 for a long time. Like, there are some examples of, you know, of runaway victories, like, you know, the Obama one that happened. But again, George W. Bush was quite unpopular because of the 2008 financial crisis and also the war in Iraq, right? So let's see how this develops. I hope that we get another Democrat that is pro-Bitcoin that becomes head of the Senate Banking Committee. I just don't want it to devolve into this partisan issue. We can we could do a deep dive from an ideological perspective. And I don't think I've talked about that for a very long time as to why members of the Democratic Party would be anti-Bitcoin. We could do that if you don't mind, Opti. It's up to you.
Well, before you do that, I do want to put some context on this, because I don't know if you saw yesterday, there was a clip of Stephen Miller going around basically saying, like, paraphrasing, but that the U.S. government is going to basically close down, you know, lefty, progressive, you know, using very strong wording. That it starts with a T here. They're going to start shutting down the progressive bank accounts. And now at this point, it's like,
that's not cool too. So I'll pull it up. Republicans are debanking now.
Yeah, too? Exactly. So now they need Bitcoin.
So they're playing the same game as the left wing, essentially, is what you're saying.
Without a doubt. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. So keep going and I'll pull it up.
So yeah, so from an ideological perspective, if you believe in wealth,
here we go. You can read it.
If you believe in so Stephen Miller says SPM7 will lead to the debanking.
NSPM7.
What did I say? NSPM7 will lead to the debanking, defunding, and disruption of left-wing political I can't say that on YouTube. Groups that are operating in our country, illegal groups. Okay, so but again, that's a slippery slope because it's like, are these groups actually committing crimes, or is it kind of just like going against your political opponents, right? And who gets to define that, right? It's a very slippery slope. Like if they are committing crimes, that's one thing. But then, anyhow, back to my point. From an ideological perspective, if you believe in wealth redistribution, Bitcoin makes that very difficult. And let me explain to you why. It's not about direct taxation. Wealth redistribution has two mechanisms. The primary one, everyone thinks it's taxes, but it's not. The primary method of wealth redistribution is when governments print money. When governments print money, it's a wealth redistribution mechanism from the lower and middle classes to the upper class that has the means to save in assets and back to the government. And the reason that people that believe in wealth redistribution are okay with that is because they don't really have the knowledge and understanding that their money is losing purchasing power precisely because the government is printing money. What they're paying attention to is the fact that the government is giving them handouts. But they don't understand that those handouts aren't free. So if the government is saying, hey, listen, free healthcare, free schooling, you're like, that sounds awesome. That sounds great. And you're like, where do I get to sign up? How do I support this? What they don't realize is you're paying for that because your money is getting debased. So there's an educational component as well. And there's an entire media complex. We've played you guys clips of like Gary's Economics, or what was that guy's name? Steve's Economics or something like that.
I think it was Gary.
And it's like there's a whole media industrial complex that is extremely well funded, highly produced, that convinces people that that form of economic policy is viable long term. History has shown that the best way for an equal society, a society that has upward mobility, is the free markets. Are the free markets inherently equal? No, they're not. Obviously, people that innovate, people that have discovered new ideas, people that take risks, start companies, and those companies succeed, by definition, they're going to have more wealth. And I'll just go back to, it's not natural, this idea of saying, hey, everyone has to be, there's a difference between treating your fellow human being with dignity and respect. And then there's this other concept of coercively trying to make society equal. Because it's not natural, it's not normal. And I'll give you an example. There is the Argentina and England game that happened. Messi had 2 assists. They were crazy. It's like the best soccer player in the world. It hurts me to say that because I'm a Real Madrid fan and I like Cristiano Ronaldo. But the guy is a really good the guy's a really good soccer player. You can't deny that. So let me ask you something. Do you think Messi's skill set is equal to the rest of those people, the rest of those players on those teams? Or does he stand out? Every single human being has different talents, different skill sets, different views. So how do you make a society equal without a coercive force that inevitably comes from the state? We had a great example of societies that tried to run so-called equal societies like the Soviet Union, and it collapsed in 70 years. We have the other example of societies that are driven by the free market. They have strong protection of property rights. And those societies reach prosperity. Even in communist China. Communist China used to be a centrally planned economy. And you know what happened? They pivoted. And they opened to free market, they opened to the free market. And they started allowing capitalism. And now they still call themselves communists. The way they get away with it is they say it's Chinese communism with it's communism with Chinese characteristics. Even Vietnam, also, they call themselves communists, but it's a free market. People open businesses in Vietnam. The only thing is that you can't criticize the governments. If you live in those countries, you can't criticize the government of Vietnam. You can't criticize the government, the CCP. So it's very clear to me that societies that have private property rights and have the ability for individuals to transact freely become very prosperous. So this goes all the way back to the idea of the central bank. If you look at the Communist Manifesto, the fifth tenet of the Communist Manifesto is the necessity for the centralization of credit. So the necessity for a central bank. If you don't have a central bank in your country, you can't have a collectivist regime. So from an ideological perspective, I believe that's what it comes down to. That's ultimately why Elizabeth Warren, from an ideological perspective, she's inherently against Bitcoin, because it doesn't allow wealth redistribution, which from an ideological perspective, she believes is necessary for a more quote unquote equal society. But as history has shown, that has never worked. Even in communist societies, what ends up happening is that there's a pyramid. In capitalist countries, there's a pyramid, the lower class, the middle class, the upper class, et cetera, et cetera. In communist societies, there's a pyramid as well, except the vast majority of people are poor. And then there's an elite at the very top that are very wealthy and very powerful. So you've never had an example of society that's been completely equal. It's impossible. It doesn't work. So I believe that that's the primary reason as to why Elizabeth Warren is against Bitcoin. I know Arthur Hayes has different opinions, but that's my opinion. Anyways, it's going to be a great show, guys. Like I said, we are going to be announcing on today's show an awesome Bitcoin documentary. We have a trailer for you guys. We have the creators of the film joining us. And it's going to be fantastic. You guys are going to want to stay tuned. We're going to be right back just after this quick break.
Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own. Paper burns, paper floods, paper fades. If your seed phrase is written on paper, it's not really backed up. It's waiting to disappear. Stampseed's DIY kit lets you hammer your seed words directly into commercial grade titanium. Fireproof, crush-proof, waterproof, and permanent. Once your words are in the metal, they aren't going anywhere. Use code SIMPLY at stampseed.com for 15% off anything in the store. That's stampseed.com, code SIMPLY.
Bueno, tuve 10 tentativas de homicidio.
Most people don't really know anything about the IMF. The bank and the fund were created to create international economic stability. Unfortunately, that is the opposite of what they've done.
Mi hijo joven, yo me crecí con mis padres en una finca, con mi papá y mi mamá.
After like the mid-50s, they were repurposed to extract resources from the developing world.
Pindeco, me han ofrecido mucho dinero, pero como yo no quiero dinero, yo quiero vivir, entonces no me pueden sacar.
There are creditors who deposit funds at the bank. It will kind of disperse the funds as it sees progress in the country.
But what is progress?
Bueno, ellos empiezan a decir, le vamos a pagar mucho dinero por mes. Sembraba y yo seguía sembrando.
These loans are given out with conditions. This is called structural adjustment.
Tuvimos gran persecución, echaron compañeros a la cárcel, nos llevaban preso.
The goal is to change the society. It's horrible for the country.
Más de 1 millón de colones me robaron. Ellos creyeron que me iban a matar y aquí estoy, gracias a Dios. Entonces, por eso estamos muy felices. Porque tenemos Bitcoin. Exacto.
Amazing trailer. We got the producer of the Hummingbird documentary. It's called The Bitcoin Jungle Story. Fantastic trailer. I'm so excited. It premieres tomorrow, guys. The premiere is live on the Simply Bitcoin YouTube channel. It premieres tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're not going to want to miss it. Paul, welcome to the show. Speaking of the jungle, seems like you're in the jungle, my friend. How you doing,
in the jungle,
dude?
man. Doing great. Don't
Dude,
be back.
so-
I just did a little Euro tour, and now we're back in the jungle, so I feel home.
Hell yeah. So you managed to escape Europe successfully. Love it. So yeah, man, a fantastic trailer. You know what Alex Gladstein was saying about the IMF. I mean, the moves that they were making and just the positivity of this lady, you know, talking about like, look, like they're stealing from me. They're doing all these crazy things, but now I have Bitcoin. It's okay now, you know, and usually you don't see that type of understanding and that type of appreciation of Bitcoin in the older generations. You usually see that in the younger generations, but this is another example of someone who has adopted Bitcoin out of necessity because the incentive is there for her to seek an alternative. And I would say that's one of the best ways to adopt Bitcoin. That's literally why Bitcoin Beach was born, right? Because they didn't have an alternative payment system at Bitcoin Beach, so they had to adopt Bitcoin because it was the only payment system that they can implement in that town. So, Paul, welcome to the show, man. Tell us a little bit more about this documentary. How long did it take? What inspired you, to produce it? Paul, the floor is yours.
Yeah, man. So it all just kind of happened so like naturally and organically as things do in the jungle. Matt and I met in 2023 early, and we met at a Bitcoin meetup in another place in Costa Rica. And then shortly after that, there's a conference happening in the kind of newish Bitcoin jungle. And it was the first Nostr conference. And we met and we were like, hey, let's just take a camera, maybe film a little hit piece. Maybe we'll ship it to some companies and maybe get a sponsorship and go show some more circular economies going on in the world, or just Bitcoin in real life. And we started filming and we kept filming and people just kept talking. And when Matt got back to his office to kind of go chop up, a first cut of this thing, he was like, hey, there is a much bigger story here, especially with the story of Estella, which is the Bitcoin grandma. She literally, I just saw her today. She has a sign at the farmer's market that says La Abuelita del Bitcoin, the Bitcoin grandma. And so it's been a 3-year process, and it is finally time to release this baby. And now we have Matt.
Amazing. That's fantastic, man. 3 years of love, dedication, proof of work, to get to this point. We have the director of the film, Matt, joining us on the show today. Matt, we just played the trailer, giving everyone a little bit of a tease of what they can expect tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when the documentary drops. Matt, Paul was giving a little bit of the backstory on how this happened. As a director, what was your vision on this film? Like, what motivated you? What do you want people to take away from this motion picture?
Hey, you can hear me all right?
Yes, absolutely. You're good to go.
Great. Well, yeah, like Paul was saying, it's been a 3-year process. And I think the motivation came from, so Paul and I, we met down in Costa Rica in 2020, and it was on the heels of all the COVID lockdowns, right? And during that time, it kind of felt like there was sort of this split in the world where a lot of people had a sense that all the restrictions and things like that really wasn't something they agreed with. And so a lot of people left where they live, right? And so in Canada, a bunch of people went to Costa Rica to kind of get away from that whole environment of fear and control and all that. And it seemed like people from all around the world were sort of consolidating in Costa Rica for the same reason, trying to get away from this sense of don't want to be told what to do with their health and everything, right? So going into Costa Rica, there's this sense of a movement towards learning about health from a more holistic perspective, from whether that's like more natural medicines and things like this. And I think Paul and I, we really carried that when we first met. And it happened to be that we're also really into Bitcoin at the same time. And so it's sort of this meeting point of people who are super into Bitcoin, but then also more leaning towards alternative ways of living. And once you get down to Costa Rica, it becomes very clear that a lot of people down there embrace that sort of mentality. They're like out in the morning every day in the sun, getting healthy sunshine, eating organic food, exercising, and definitely embracing that sort of healthy living mentality. And what we saw was those two communities weren't exactly like speaking to one another. And sorry, those two communities being the health people and the Bitcoin people. And Paul at the time was sort of making little videos about Bitcoin, about health. And I'm more of a professional filmmaker, I guess. I have a production company and all that. So I have a more of an editing background. And we kind of came together and we're like, is there anything we could possibly do to kind of like merge these two worlds? And very serendipitously, the whole Bitcoin Jungle project got started around that time. And we started to hear about it. And Paul went over to Uvita and Dominical, and he was seeing what they were doing. And he was telling me, like, we gotta film something here because this community is exactly what we were talking about, sort of integrating those two sides of the coin. And as we started to film some things and talk to the people in that community, it just felt very clear that, it's happening. These two communities are starting to talk to one another and both empowering each other. So making the documentary was, I think that's sort of where it came from in its heart, was this desire to get those people that were resonating in a similar place to talk to each other more.
So there was a point in the film that showed Alex Gladstein on Peter McCormack's podcast talking about the IMF, and you can hear the lady talking about, you know, her troubles as well. What was she describing? What exactly was the IMF doing without revealing too much about the film, Matt?
Yeah, so if anyone has watched that episode with Gladstein and Peter McCormack on what Bitcoin did, and read any of Gladstein's articles, he talks about this idea of structural adjustment, which is a sort of requirement that when the IMF or an institution like that gives out a big loan to a country, they have these set of requirements that they call structural adjustment, which refers to different economic policies that they want the country to agree to. You know, they might want to allow this American company to come in and do all of the construction work, or be the contractor for cutting down the forest and that sort of thing. And so with Estella, years ago, she was basically the victim of I don't want to say a victim, but she had to engage with that process on a really personal level, because Costa Rica had cut a deal with the IMF and had allowed a company called Pindeco to enter into the forest, the jungle of Costa Rica, and basically start to farm. They wanted to farm pineapples on Estella's property. And Estella didn't want that because she grew up in Costa Rica. She's lived there her whole life and loves her land. And she had her own farming operation with lots of different fruits and vegetables and everything. And she wasn't a fan of the idea of monocropping just pineapples. And so she was basically engaged in this legal battle to get her to retain the rights to her property.
Man, I mean, my take on that is, you know, the amount of FUD that was coming out of the IMF, specifically when El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, and they kind of held El Salvador hostage, and they actually forced El Salvador to reverse that legal tender status for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Just tells me how much they fear this thing. And just based on what you were saying, Matt, it seems like the IMF with these loans, they're really mechanisms of control more than what they try to perceive to the world, where it's like, actually these loans are to help these developing countries. But from my perspective, it seems like these loans they come with strings attached that really enslave these countries more than actually help them. Yeah. And what is your take on that assessment?
Well, whether or not the intention is to control the country through these economic means is sort of irrelevant because that's the result, right? Like, it ends up that those countries have far less control over the say of how they organize their economy. So I'm not sure if Paul, did we give a quick view of the eagle and the condor yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
But it goes.
So,
That's what it goes into. It's like these loans and creating all these jobs, which kind of looks good on paper, but what we're actually doing is just completely disrupting the way of life of just living off the land, and that'll go into the eagle and the condor, which you can explain that.
yeah, well, like really, so in the film, we go into the IMF a bit, and we show how they tried to take Estella's property. And you can look at that situation and be like, oh, they're bad, they're evil people and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe there's an aspect to it that is just kind of straight up nefarious. I can't know. Like, I don't really know. I don't think any of us really know for sure. However, I think the bigger picture that the film tries to say is, going to the beginning of the film, we have this idea of the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. And I won't get too much into it, but basically the idea is that thousands and thousands of years ago, indigenous people, they had the idea that humanity split down two different paths. And one was the path of the eagle and one was the path of the condor. And the eagle people are way more mind-centric. They are scientific, industrial, mathematics, engineering, building things. And then the condor people are more emotional, heart-oriented, connected to the land, relationships, nature, animals, leaning towards more spiritual things. And so humanity went down these two different paths, and the prophecy states that in the 1500s, what they called the eighth Pachacudi, which is a 500-year interval, which lined up to be around the 1500s, that the eagle peoples would become so powerful that they would take over or almost eliminate the condor people. And that sort of coincides with Columbus coming over to the Americas and really, you know, denigrating the ways of life of the people that lived there and instituting a more European eagle mentality. And then the prophecy goes on to say that during our time, just in the 2000s, that the eagle and the condor, they would start to come back together and be in a better balance with one another. So the way I see not just the IMF, but modern civilization in general, you could say leans really eagle mindset. And the whole world of fiat money and, you know, modern economies where we're going to manage and control money, and we have people who choose the interest rates and all these things. They're trying to sort of engineer the world in a very particular way, which is very much like an extension of this eagle mindset. And so it seems to me like the IMF and institutions like that, they're very much sort of acting out the fullest version of this eagle mindset. And I hope people take away from the film that it's not necessarily that the people in those institutions are evil or bad or something like that, but they are living their life through a certain lens, right? I don't know if that lands, but that's sort of the bigger picture of what we're trying to say.
Absolutely, man. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and you know, Paul, you've been a living example of this, is pura vida. You know, that Costa Rican living, and kind of the freedom associated with it. You know, getting in touch with nature. I don't think I've ever seen you with a shirt on. Could you talk a little bit about, you know, why Costa Rica has become this citadel for Bitcoiners? Like, why do they feel there's so much freedom in Costa Rica compared to other countries? You're muted, Paul.
Yeah, pura vida, that means pure life. And it's like this, it's this best piece of software that you could just put into someone's mind. It's like Timon and Pumbaa, Hakuna Matata. I mean, it's like everybody has this little motto in the back of their head saying pura vida, and like if something goes well, great, pura vida. Something goes shit, pura vida. It's all good. But why here? I mean, look around. I got cows back there. You got just luscious jungle, fruits here year round. There's something geopolitically, Costa Rica doesn't have an army. Kind of just, it's a different feel down here. There's people, not people like walking around with guns. It's relatively safe. It's been tourist friendly for a while, so it's kind of built up. You're not going to save much money, but really just the sovereignty. Like Bitcoiners care a lot about sovereignty. You can get some land here, put some fruit trees on it, meet your farmer for meat, and live a sovereign life, kind of disconnected from, you know, the mainstream narratives. And it's kind of like a return to the roots and to what it was like. And I think that's really calling to Bitcoiners right now. I mean, I see a lot of people that come down here and yeah, they're buying up land to preserve it and to live off of it. And that's so cool. It's like, it's this return to what always was, instead of like the artificial and manufactured life that, you know, that's coming, eating the bugs and everything up in the West. But
I love that. I love that. So gentlemen, quick elevator pitch. What should people expect tomorrow with this documentary? If you had 30 seconds in an elevator, starting with you, Matt, I'm timing you.
It's about a community that came together around shared values from very different walks of life, that really is respectful of the land. They're very embodied in where they live, and they are powering this community through Bitcoin.
Love it. Love it. Paul, elevator pitch, 30 seconds. What is this documentary to you? Why should people be excited to watch it?
This documentary makes a great case that, you know, Bitcoin is for anybody that chooses to opt in. It's the money for the hippies. It's the money for the rebels. It's the money for the people who care about humanity.
Love it. Love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on today's show. Guys, go check out the film tomorrow. It releases at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll play you guys the trailer once again. I want to thank the producer, Paul, and the director, Matt, for coming on today's Simply Bitcoin live show. Gentlemen, any last words for the hundreds of people watching Simply Bitcoin live right now?
Pura vida, come join me down here.
Love it. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us again, guys. Tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the documentary is going to premiere on the Simply Bitcoin YouTube channel. You're not going to want to miss it.
And Rumble.
You're not going to want to miss it. So check it out. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
Bueno, tuve 10 tentativas de homicidio.
Most people don't really know anything about the IMF. The bank and the fund were created to create international economic stability. Unfortunately, that is the opposite of what they've done.
Fui joven, yo me crecí con mis padres en una finca, con mi papá y mi mamá.
After like the mid-50s, they were repurposed to extract resources from the developing world.
Pindeco, me han ofrecido mucho dinero, pero como yo no quiero dinero, yo quiero vivir, entonces no me pueden sacar.
There are creditors who deposit funds at the bank. it will kind of disperse the funds as it sees progress in the country.
But what is progress?
Bueno, ellos empiezan a decir, le vamos a pagar mucho dinero por mes. Sembraba, y yo seguía sembrando.
These loans are given out with conditions, because this is called structural adjustment.
Tuvimos gran persecución, echaron compañeros a la cárcel, nos llevaban preso.
The goal is to change the society. It's horrible for the country.
Más de 1 millón de colones me robaron. Ellos creyeron que me iban a matar y aquí estoy, gracias a Dios. Entonces, por eso estamos muy felices. Porque tenemos Bitcoin. Exacto.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. If you ever thought, what happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? Or what happens if I lose my phone? You're not alone. For a lot of people, the biggest barrier to self-custody isn't buying Bitcoin. It's the fear of making a mistake. And that's why I like Bitkey and I recommend it to my friends and family. Bitkey is a Bitcoin wallet built for real life, not just for day one, but for everything that happens in between. Lost devices, upgrades, accidents, and long-term ownership. There's no seed phrase to write down and worry about losing, and no single point of failure that can lock you out of your Bitcoin forever. What really stands out about Bitkey is the peace of mind. Recovery is built in, inheritance is built in. It's a complete self-custody system built by the team behind Square and Cash App, designed to make holding your own Bitcoin simpler and safer. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today using Bitkey. Go to bitkey.world and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your new Bitkey. That's bitkey.world, promo code SIMPLY. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy across 3 continents, HIVE runs dual engines, Bitcoin mining and AI compute. Their AI platform is ranked #1 in the world for network performance, and it's doing something bigger than compute. It's accelerating human discovery, the science, the breakthroughs, pushing humanity further and faster. Listed on the NASDAQ with the ticker HIVE. Catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech on X or HIVEdigitaltech.com.
You secured your Bitcoin, but did you secure your devices too? They're still broadcasting your location and digital footprint. GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell, 5G, EMF, all of it is leaking. Escape Zone fixes that. Their Faraday bags block every signal your device emits, so you decide when you're detectable, not the grid. Built for Bitcoiners who know sovereignty isn't just your wallet. It's your phone, your hardware wallet, your keys, and your entire digital life. Go to escapezone.com/simply and use code SIMPLY for 10% off. That's escapezone.com/simply, code SIMPLY. All right, guys, before we move on, we are going to do a normal numbers here. Shout out to the Rumble wallet, guys. You know what we're about. We love Rumble. We love freedom of speech, and we are always finding ways so that you guys can secure your Bitcoin conveniently and also safely. This is why we love Rumble wallet. First of all, they are literally giving you money to just download the wallet. If you use the promo code SIMPLY10, they're going to give you $10 just for downloading the wallet. So go use it. Again, it is non-custodial. You can pay your favorite Rumble content creators. it's a pretty good wallet. All right, guys. So again, use, and it's for your phone. So if you don't want to go buy hardware wallet, you want to take your Bitcoin off the exchanges, try the Rumble wallet. Again, go to wallet.rumble.com, use the promo code simply10, and they will give you free money today. Anyways, moving on. The current Bitcoin price is $64,010. I repeat, 64010. It is a 49.3 discount from all-time high, and the market cap is currently $1.28 trillion. And the current block height is 958,439. All right, guys. So for the clip, actually, Nico kind of played you the short version of this clip, but I want to play the whole thing because I think it gives you a lot more context of where the Clarity Act stands. And like I told you, we have a bunch of Clarity Act clips for you guys today. So let me just play the clip, and then I guess maybe we will speculate on if it's actually going through. The clip might be a little more bullish than I am. Maybe not as bullish as Nico will be. But anyways, let's play the whole clip. It's about a minute.
You and other members of the Financial Services Committee are in New York to hold a field hearing on this bill. What can you tell us about the Clarity Act?
This is our opportunity to put real and substantive legislation on the floor and provide regulatory clarity in the digital assets space. Again, this is an example of the House doing its job. We passed this now approximately a year ago. The Senate has been struggling to move this forward. I'm optimistic that we get this across the line next week in the United States Senate. It's absolutely essential that the United States sets the gold standard for regulations in the digital asset space, that we unlock so much capital, human capital and financial capital that will come into these markets in the United States of America in a regulatory regime that protects consumers. Clarity does that. It's passed the House. It's time for the Senate to act.
Well, I mean, the Senate is wrangling with Democrats over the language on ethics, Congressman. You know that.
Well, individuals that are concerned about the broader ethics reforms, and I think that there is a need to look at this, actually should be supportive of the bill. If an individual is concerned about how meme coins were treated under President Biden's appointment of Gary Gensler, all the more reason to move forward Clarity, to put a regulatory structure in place to make sure that we're regulating good and bad actors. The good actors in the space want the bad actors to be regulated. We all want the bad actors out. The Clarity Act provides a regulatory environment to be able to do just that. And so the individuals that grandstand on the ethics side should be more supportive than anyone else about moving Clarity across the line.
All right, we will leave it there.
See, so this is what I mean with he's trying to shove the blame on Biden and Gary Gensler. And it's like, yes, Gary Gensler and Biden were not exactly, the Biden administration was not exactly pro Bitcoin / crypto. Like we had Operation 2.0, but it's like, it doesn't help that a week before his inauguration, Trump himself launched a meme coin that I think is down more than 90%. Then his wife launched a meme coin, Melania coin. So this is why we were so frustrated and kind of disillusioned when the president did that, because we knew from the get-go, it was like, this is not a good association. And we have a country that has set an example for the rest of the world that you could approach the digital asset space correctly. You could be a country that is Bitcoin only. You could be a country that has Bitcoin only regulation. And that country is El Salvador. El Salvador's treasury is literally public. You can verify it. So El Salvador is years ahead of the United States. That's like President Trump's talking points. It's like, if we don't get this done, China will. Okay, great. Russia will. Okay, great. The United States already got beat. El Salvador was first. They're setting the example for the rest of the world. They're setting the example for Central and South America. As originally someone who's from South America, makes me so proud. So it can be done. It's proven that it can be done. So I don't know what's going to happen. I told you guys my opinion in the beginning of the show regarding why they're pushing this so hard now, why this wording is coming out now. And it's literally because they're running out of time. Midterms coming up in November. 85% chance the Republicans lose the House. Not a good look that the president made a fortune while everyone got wrecked, right? I'm still voting Republican, by the way. So, you know, it is what it is. So let's see if it gets across the finish line.
Yeah, let's speculate here real quick. What are your odds? Don't do the poly market odds, because right now I think they're like 40%. What do you think it's actually going to get through next week?
I think they're putting everything on the field to give it one last shot. Let's see if they're able to push it forward. I don't know if they have enough support in the Senate. In the Senate, they need 60 votes. So they need Democrats going across the aisle and voting for this bill. They can't just push it with the Republican majority. So let's see if they can get those 7 Democratic senators to agree. In the House, it's a lot easier because all in the House, you just need a simple majority. But in the Senate, you need those 60 votes, which make it very difficult. And if it doesn't get passed, Senator Lummis said it herself. We probably won't get another opportunity until at least 2028. You could make an argument that
she said 2030, I think.
2030. You could make an argument that that's a good thing, right? Because there's a lot of the things in the Clarity Act that, like, you know, a lot of Bitcoiners don't necessarily agree with. Bitcoin doesn't need regulation. However, if you're a Bitcoin entrepreneur in the United States, or if you're a Bitcoin business in the United States, this will help you. This is bullish for number go up. This does prevent an Operation Choke Point 3.0 type of situation. So there's nuance there, right? There's the look. If Bitcoin could have been regulated, if Bitcoin could be regulated, it would defeat the purpose. So this is not about the protocol side. This is not about, you know, the average person there staying humble, staying solvent, stacking sats. This is more so about business protections in the United States and also protections for open source open source developers in general, which I think is extremely important because that was weaponized during the previous administration. And as I told you regarding Elizabeth Warren and her stance, and it's clearly showing that they're not really changing that political strategy. You know, again, as more and more people start to adopt Bitcoin and opt out of fiat, which is one of the primary funding mechanisms for a lot of these governments so that they could spend more than they collect in tax revenue. It's the thesis from the sovereign individual, right? Information technologies, including Bitcoin, are, to quote the book directly, right now, nation states see their citizens as cattle, and information technologies give those cattle wings. And I mean, I think that the documentary we just played is really relevant to that. Paul's words regarding Pura Vida in Costa Rica and the sovereignty aspect of just being able to, you know, buy land and just build your own citadel in Costa Rica, like, it's a great representation of that. Like, what is Bitcoin ultimately about? Bitcoin ultimately it's about giving back your freedom. That's what it's about. That's what this whole movement is about. So anyhow, Bitcoiner slavery, we'll stay tuned. We're going to cover it. Let's see if the Clarity Act gets across the finish line. I hope it does. Like I said, I think it'll be very, very bullish for the industry as a whole. Let's see what happens. Before we wrap up today's show, guys, I do want to give a shout out to Mining Disrupt. It's coming up next week, ladies and gentlemen. You want to get your tickets quickly because you're running out of time. It is literally next week on July 21st through the 23rd in Miami, Florida. We will be live streaming the entire conference from the Simply Bitcoin channel, but you guys want to go in person, we will have a booth there. We will be conducting some interviews from the floor. It's going to be awesome. All the biggest players from the entire Bitcoin industry are going to be there. Bitcoin mining industry are going to be there. So if you're trying to get a job in the Bitcoin mining industry, if you're trying to network, if you want to learn more about the Bitcoin mining industry, this is the conference that you want to go to. Mining Disrupt 2026, July 21st through the 23rd in Miami, Florida. Get your tickets now. Use promo code simplybitcoin to get 20% off. Use the link in the video/podcast description. All right, everybody, that wraps up today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Simply Bitcoin this entire week. It's been crazy. It's been, there's never a boring or dulling week in Bitcoin. It's, even if the price is going sideways, you never stop grinding. You gotta keep grinding. You got to stay focused. Make sure you have more Bitcoin than the day before. Remember what we're fighting for, Bitcoin or slavery. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. We will see you next week for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. And don't forget to tune into the documentary tomorrow. Again, it premieres at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.